I'm just gonna say this right up front. If I am recommending you a sports TV show, like a sports TV show, or even an esports TV show, things that I do not care at all about, like I am the least athletic person ever, and I look at sports and I'm like, I don't understand what's happening right now. So for me to recommend a show like that, it's gotta be excellent. Hello interwebs, yes, as my intro stated, I am here to technically review, but more actually recommend the series Players to You, which is a series that I had never even heard of, had no intention of watching, but actually fell into watching when they released all of the episodes of the series for free over on YouTube, when they had previously been over on Paramount Plus, which may or may not speak to how well the viewership on the show is going, which is very sad because it is excellent. But the reason that I picked it up beyond it just being freely available and easy to watch for me was the fact that I learned that this show was made by the same people who made another great hidden gem a few years ago over on Netflix called American Vandal. If you all have not heard of American Vandal, stop what you're doing right now and go and watch it, because it is a 2-season show that is a fairly quick binge. I believe each season is only 8 episodes long, and they have 30-minute episodes. But the basic premise of that show was it was a mockumentary style series set in a high school about high schoolers making a documentary about a really ridiculous prank that was done in their school, penises drawn on cars, which sounds really dumb and like a really over the top and silly and kind of one note joke to build a mockumentary series around. But what made American Vandal so excellent was it used that ridiculous starting premise, but then took you down a story that really dove into all the nuances and niches of a high school environment and all the relationships and drama that drive that sort of community and social circle. And it made it feel very real despite the ridiculousness of the circumstances and the story being told. It added a lot of emotional authenticity, not only just to the players involved in that mystery, but to the people telling the story itself. And I thought it was absolutely a fantastic series that was also really hilarious, but managed to be very emotional. So when I heard that the creators of American Vandal were doing a show about esports, I was really excited because I know that they would bring that emotional authenticity to the show. That being said, when I started watching the first episode, I was a bit nervous because, and I should have trusted them because they did the same thing with American Vandal, but I was a bit nervous that this show was also going to kind of be a one-note joke, because how this series starts off is with the joke of, oh, look how funny it is that we are treating esports, the sort of video game sports, the same way that we would treat a physical sport, like football or soccer or something like that. And that sort of seems to be the joke, haha, look, we're treating video games as the same as athleticism. And I didn't really, number one, that I think that is kind of a one-note joke, haha, these things are slightly different, but we're treating them the same level of things. And there's jokes like that in the initial episode, characters saying I know people think esports players we're Greek gods or whatever, without any sort of irony or statement like that. That joke is there. And it worried me because I am someone who is of the belief, even though I'm not a big sports person, I was yeah, esports is a sport. There is athleticism involved. There is actually mental play, learning strategies. There is athleticism and thought behind how to play these games. The same thing with chess or something like that. So I figured if that was going to be the joke, not only do I think that it's a one-note joke, I think it's honestly kind of devaluing to what esports is. And I'm not even someone involved in that scene, and I think it deserves respect. But I think that what they did is smart to start there, because I think it will allow people who do sort of see esports as ridiculous to sort of get drawn into the actual drama of it, so that by the end of the series, that joke is just gone, and you are the characters are fully talking about this as if it's a sports documentary, like a Michael Jackson sports documentary. It's of the same level and drama and tension, but it's done with complete sincerity, and you buy it. That level of humor is gone. So I think that opening bit is just a way to get people who might be put off by the concept of an esports show to get really invested into the actual drama of the series, which is the same thing they did with American Vandal, but they're sort of bringing it into the esports scene, which I thought was really smart, and I really loved it. But it does, as someone who was more on the side of esports is a sport, kind of threw me in the first episode. So if that's something that's going to bother you, just know that after the first episode or so, that sort of goes away, and you just get fully arrested into this story. And the story of this is, in true American Vandal fashion, really excellent, and I think the characters they have involved in this are comedic, over the top, somewhat broad character stereotypes, but then when you get into them more and more and more, you start to understand their psychology, how they got to these places, and the show just does a great job of like drawing lines between like who these characters are when you meet them to where they are now and what their struggle and what they need to overcome is in their own personal lives, told in the big drama stage of esports, which is what a good sports story always does, right? So you have Cream Cheese, which ridiculous name, but he is the sort of leader of this team, Fugitive, which is an esports team. And he seems like the very egotistical, full of himself sports player. You know, he's doing it for years. He's like kind of got this big ego and chip on his shoulder, but he's never won an actual game. So he's sort of like big mouth and boisterous. But as the show goes forward, you start to learn a little bit more about his psychology. And yes, he is full of himself. Yes, he is sort of like wanting all the attention. But you start to understand where that comes from in his history and what happened in the past of their journey to get to this point, to be this team that they are. And you understand why he's that way. And there's an episode, I think it's the penultimate episode of the season, and I won't spoil, but like there's a moment where they go back and say like, this is the moment, all this stuff accumulated in this moment. And you're like, oh, I see why he became this person, why he became this kind of an asshole, but who he used to be, and that he used to be a kind, caring person, but he's sort of lost that. And the show just does a great job making you be like, please learn, please grow, and you just want it so bad for him, and it makes you feel it on every level. And that is contrasted by the character of Organism, who is a young, upstart esports player who joins Fugitive's team, and seems like he's just like, he's all about himself. And rightfully so, because no one's around him in his life and his family ever helped him. They sort of saw him as like the weird esports kid playing sports, but then once he's able to like win this stage and gets a lot of money, his family's like, oh, we can come in and we can sort of like use you to get some money and attention for our family. But they don't actually care about him. So he's not used to having a support structure, and that sort of contrasts with Cream Cheese, very egotism, and that's all they can see of each other. Is each Cream Cheese can only see, this kid who doesn't communicate, is in it for himself, and isn't willing to like work as part of a team, versus Organism seeing Cream Cheese as this just egotistical player. And you see that they both, if they just communicated and spoke and actually were open and vulnerable with each other, why they would be perfect together. They would work so well together, and they just keep knocking heads, and it's such great drama because you just want them to succeed and you understand both of them. And I won't say whether or not they do, but it is very cathartic as the show goes through. And again, all told through this really smart esports lens that like brings the sports drama into the esports world. That again, just as it goes on, there's still humor, there's still jokes, there's still like funny stuff going on, but it's very authentic, and the layer of cynicism around esports just goes away and becomes very earnest. And it was just absolutely a joy. And then beyond that, just some of the stuff in some of the larger narrative going on between these two characters, beyond these two characters, I think is also really smart. Speaking of like billionaires coming in and buying teams and taking control away from the teams that like built it up with their own hands, because billionaires want to try and own things and get involved in the hot new thing, as tech billionaires always kind of do, which esports is, and make money. And so there's that discussion of like systemic problems putting upon individuals and how they sort of get wrapped up into like just worrying about money and not the actual passion that they get caught up in, which if anyone knows my politics, I'm here for that type of story. And I think it works really wonderfully here. There's some interesting betrayals and team dynamics beyond our main two characters, like the character of I want to say Grub, I think is his name. I forget his name, but there's a character of Grub who's like sort of like a sports commentator character, and as you learn his history with Cream Cheese and the Fugitive team, you're like, oh man, interesting asshole. I'm fascinated by him as a character, and I loved seeing his story develop too. So just the complex dynamics between all of these characters, as well as understanding systemic problems, while also all telling a very great individual story about sports and team dynamics and communication and forming a community. I think this is a really beautiful show. So if you have not gotten a chance to watch Players yet, or American Vandal, if you haven't watched American Vandal, go watch that, because as much as I like Players, I think American Vandal is better, but this is still a very good show. I would highly recommend it. I think the only like major knock that I can give to Players as a series is you can very much tell that there is a a corporate angle in the show, in the sense that like a lot of the show is built around League of Legends. I'm very sure, I didn't look into it, but I'm very sure League of Legends helped fund this program because they use a lot of the terminology and go into some of the lore and stuff. It's mentioned here and there. So I would not be surprised if Riot Games helped to fund this show. I would be shocked if they didn't. I didn't necessarily check, but I would be absolutely shocked if they hadn't. So be aware that there is a little bit of like marketing of League of Legends within the show, just as sort of like as like background noise. I will also say too, just to be open, like Riot Games has had allegations of like mistreating its staff and women as well, on their staff specifically. I don't know if it's been addressed completely. I haven't kept up to date on the stuff with Riot Games, but might still be an issue worth looking into. So there's that caveat on that if you don't want to support it. But if you're willing to support great creators who like the people who make American Vandal, this is a great show. It should still be available on YouTube, every episode. I don't know how long they're going to have it there. I think they said it was for a limited time. So if you don't have a Paramount Plus subscription, you can get it there, but it will also be on Paramount Plus. So yeah, players, check it out. I highly recommend it. But I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. But beyond all that, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all, my friends, live long and prosper.